This is a Guide Your Light network production, creating podcasts with purpose. Hello, I'm Maritza Barone. Welcome to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. Has there ever been a moment in your life where you heard, read, or were told something that you simply could not unhear? Something that made you stop in your tracks and helped you to see the world differently in some way, a better way. On this podcast, we create those life-changing moments for you through interviews with some of the world's most profound people around the globe. We explore groundbreaking ideas in health and well-being.
What we're really doing is getting to the root cause of your symptoms. And often we find that that is an emotional block that we have been carrying around in our body that's become almost crystallized and created a physical symptom.
Relationships.
And for women as well, when I talk about respect, it's called respecting yourself, which is don't overgive. Women will tend to put themselves one down, and then wake up at 40 and go, wait a second, I am woman, I deserve respect.
Personal and professional transformation.
This is true of any skill. You only develop it by doing it. And so, if you don't get out there and just start doing it and being a bit rough around the edges at the beginning, you can't work on your craft. And so it can't turn into something.
Spirituality.
Because I think when we know who we really are, we think we're our name and our body and our form and our hair and our clothes and our skin and but when we know who we really are as infinite beings, we're free.
And so much more. So settle in. This might just be a big day for you where you hear something that changes your life in the most transformative way. Hello and welcome back to the podcast. Now, have you ever asked yourself, who the heck am I? What am I here for? And what do I stand for? Of course you have. You are living the human experience. And I feel many of us seem to be in that same boat at one or more stages of our lives. So today on this episode, I invited a good friend of mine who also happens to be a mentor in identity to help us decipher how we can dig into finding our true self. His name is Todd Jarratt, and to give you a bit of background on Todd, he grew up as the epitome of the young achiever. By 19, he was the Ducks at school and at university, a national athlete, a sports commentator, a motorsport team manager, and a sports journalist. And by 21, he became a university lecturer in human physiology and a performance coach for world champion and Olympic level athletes. Wowza. But then came his moment. Todd became unwell, and after multiple years of health issues, he nearly lost his life through immune complications. It was during this time that he realized that his life had been a mask for an internal pain. So he began a journey of mental, emotional, physical, and surprisingly to him, spiritual healing. Against the medical system's beliefs, Todd healed himself from within and witnessed hundreds of others do the same since. He now works with the human identity. What makes us who we are and also who we aren't. His mission is simple. First, it's to be happiness, joy, and love each day. And secondly, to empower others to know it is their heart, not their head, that holds the answers to which they continuously seek. You will hear this conversation and understand that Todd is purely all heart and a very unique soul. He's a way with people that allows him to peel those layers away and see the real person underneath. And he may have made me a little bit emotional during part of this conversation. That's just what he does. Sit back, get comfortable, and enjoy this chat with Todd Jarratt. And as promised, last episode, I wanted to share a couple of our reviews from our beautiful listeners that make all the difference to the support of the show and to all the work that goes into creating this show. TJ writes, "Hey, just listening to your last episode with Mike Murphy and I absolutely love it. He talks about the silver mind control method which is a program I started last year and haven't finished. Thank you for giving me the boot up the butt to get back into that. Your podcast gave me exactly what I needed. You are welcome, TJ. Let us know how you go with that silver method. It's something that I am looking at exploring myself as well. Perry says, love your work, Maritza. So much to take away and so much to learn. Always inspiring. Love the energy you bring to every podcast. Keep up the good work and bless you. Well, bless you too, Perry. And Max says, Maritza, your solo reflections episode was spot on. Thank you. More of those, please. Yes, Max, more are coming your way. Thank you again for reviewing the podcast. Please hit subscribe so we can let you know when new eps are coming up. And I won't keep you any longer. Let's jump into this chat with Todd Jarratt.
Welcome, Todd Jarratt, to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast.
Thank you for having me.
This is a long time coming. I'm so pleased we are having this conversation. It was funny because literally, you know when you have those memories that pop up on your phone? Exactly 1 year ago, on the 16th of July, I met you.
Oh, wow, down at the beach.
And today is the 20th of July, 1 year later. Oof. So we met, yes, down on the Sunshine Coast, one of the beautiful Sunshine Coast beaches in Queensland, Australia. It was Alexandra Headland, and you were running a breathwork session. There were probably 250 plus people there, and it was just off the back of COVID, and police were there and they weren't letting us actually run the event because there were too many people.
Yeah.
Do you remember that day?
I sure do. It was interesting, you could say the least, in the lead up to it with what we were going through with the police and the council and all of that side of it. But the big thing from that day was it became like a peaceful protest.
Yeah,
there was got to a point where the police and the council left because we weren't orchestrating or leading an event. It was just the community there connecting. So it was really powerful to witness.
Yeah, and it was all heart. It was just absolutely beautiful. What I've gotten to learn about you is that you are completely all heart in the 12 months that I've known you. And not only are you known as the identity mentor, you are also to me a professional hugger.
Oh, I love that. Well, I do my best to be in my heart. It's a day-to-day, it's a practice. And there's days where the head takes over, like I said to you this morning, that happens. And then the professional hugging part, that's like, what do we call it? We're an oxytocin dealer. You know, oxytocin is that love neurotransmitter. So you just deal that out everywhere you go. Give long hugs.
Yeah, no, it's so beautiful because it slows people down. It actually catches me off guard a lot. We come into the room, we see our friends generally, we give them a quick hug or a kiss or a wave or whatever it is, and then we move on. You see people for who they are, and I think that lingering hug that you give, it just makes you stop for a minute. And you're like, okay, I've got actually nowhere to be. I'm going to sit with this hug for a moment and I'm going to connect with this human being who is across from me, who's giving me their time. And it's a minute. Sometimes they go longer. I'm tempted to calculate it all and see how long in the course of your life, how long you're hugging, but there's worse ways to spend your life, right? But it does. It's such a beautiful way to slow people down. And I know that's one of your missions in life, to help people slow down. Why is that important to you? Why is that so important?
Because for me, I've been through the pain of the opposite, not slowing down. And that nearly cost me my life. So it's, you know, when we say the greater your pain, the greater your purpose or your passion, it's big for me. And it's actually why I'm really intentional, especially with the fast-paced people that are most uncomfortable with just a 3-breath hug. Really being intentional with that, because it is a shift in their nervous system. They feel something. It's kinesthetic, and you can't forget a feeling. So, yeah, that's huge for me.
I recently saw you speak at Barone Fest, which is a spiritual festival up here in Queensland on the Sunshine Coast. And I remember you walking on stage, and there was this just huge cheer for you because people remember you because you give them their time. And I think that is something that we can all take away from this conversation, is that when you give so much to people, you've left something in their heart that has them seen, that then has a spiral effect onto their lives, and they'll never forget that. People don't forget how you make them feel. Yeah. So, yeah, you're definitely a special person. Everyone listening today, you're in for a treat with Todd. He's someone beyond his years and has has the life experience behind it to make that authority even more intensified. So I'm putting this question to you today, Todd. This is a huge question, okay? And this is something that I think a lot of us come to in our lives in certain times of our lives. Who the hell are we? You're known as the identity mentor. Identity means, and the definition of it is the fact of being who or what a person is. So a lot of us get caught up in what society tells us to be, what our parents tell us to be, what we think we are, what we're supposed to be. How do we figure out who we truly are? And I'm sorry if that's the biggest question in the whole wide world.
There's a simple answer, and then there's sort of like an absolute truth answer, and then there's the relative human answer. So in terms of the relative human answer, it's uncovering, it's deconditioning who we've been told to be, what we've been conditioned to be through fear, and in a really simple form, our identity is purely the conditioned ego. So, and by ego, we're just talking about the build-up of experiences from the past that have put us in a trajectory or a path that we now label ourselves as. And so with the question, if we started with who we are, it's literally just the accumulation of the past experiences, but really based heavily on those that have left an emotional impact on us, because we're most driven to avoid the pain. And later on, once you've cleared steps 3 and 4 around pain and survival and all that, then we can go towards pleasure. So it's at that level, finding it out is pulling away the conditioning. And that's the reason that we have such high rates of anxiety and depression and unfortunately suicide, is because we're so disconnected from who we truly desire to be. And there's a feeling. When you look at most people that are living or identifying, it's I'm a construction worker, or I'm a personal trainer, or and that role isn't actually fulfilling them because it's not truly in alignment with them. And so what we do with identity is pull back all of the achievement, all of the external, and go, what is the feeling that we want to be? What is that which we want to experience? And so for me, that was getting really clear that when I went through my health journey, I'd done the work at the levels of actions, behaviors, beliefs and values and all of the personal development space. And then there was a realization of I've achieved, quote unquote, these things, but am I fulfilled? No, I was empty, and I was on my deathbed contemplating what was the point of all of this. And that brought me to the awareness of everything is about a feeling. We're working to achieve that status for a feeling. We want that car or that home for a feeling. We want that relationship for a feeling. And so it's okay, if we're working so hard and putting so much effort into getting to an outcome that gives us a feeling for 6 hours to 2 days, why don't we just use some common, so to speak, common sense, reverse engineer it, focus on creating the feeling first and be from that feeling, and then the doing is a secondary byproduct. And so that's, in a simple form, been my journey, has been my identity is who I be, what I feel. What I do comes secondary, because we're conditioned to be told that what I do creates who I am. But at the deepest level of the mind, it's the other way around. Who I am creates what I do. How I show up in the world, how I interact, how I work with people, it comes from the identity. The relative human sense is that it's layers of the mind, and it's pulling away the parts that have been driven from pain and pulling us into who we really feel we are. And then the absolute truth is we're all just one. We're one energy. We're all made from the same subatomic particles. And when you look at the different scriptures, religions, biblical teachings, or enlightened beings, they all speak of the same thing. We're all love. And so there's a truth that transcends, but for the world's population, most of us aren't there. So it's, okay, how can we be in the next best service?
And how do we bring that love and those amazing feelings into a physical existence and create a life of meaning? And I think that's where people get lost a lot, is like you said, they're almost on a hamster wheel of life, of what life throws at them. And then they get to these achievements which they thought they wanted, or I can't say they, I should say we, and they realise, no, that didn't make me happy either. And this is when we start to question, who am I? What do I want? I've got a 13-year-old and a nearly 12-year-old. And I actually said to them the other day, who are you?
Oh,
Big question.
yeah.
And then I started with the whole beliefs and values
Yeah.
talk.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to do an exercise together soon. I'm leading them up to that. I think Dr. DeMartini has something on his website that we can do together.
Yeah.
But these are huge things, and that's where I started saying, what do you believe in?
Yeah.
What do you value? What
Yeah.
what are the important things in your life? You're not just a student, you're not just a daughter. What are you beyond those things?
Yeah.
So when you started in your journey of trying to figure out who on earth Todd Jarratt was there a catalyst to that, to you asking yourself those questions?
Yeah. Yeah, there was. For me, my identity or my ego had been I'm the achiever. I'm the young guy that's doing so well. That's how people would come to me, and that validated me and my drive and all of that. And when I had the health challenges that I went through, and I ended up after the second experience where we didn't think I was going to make it, I was in the care of my parents for 8 months down in Victoria, and this was during the lockdowns. So it didn't really affect me because I couldn't get out of bed anyway. And so there was a period where I'd identified with the label of ulcerative colitis, basically an autoimmune condition where your immune system attacks your large intestine. But it got to a point with me where I'd been severe with that for 3 years, in and out of hospital, constantly passing blood and having a whole lot of challenges, where I just put it to the side and just kept working and pushing and grinding. And it got to the point where what the real issue was my liver and my kidneys went into shutdown and failure. My body was actually shutting down beyond the intestinal stuff. And when I was working with my healer or mentor at the time, he was saying, as long as you keep identifying with this label, you will continue to live with the symptoms or the thought that they will come back. So we're working on letting go of the label. And at this point in time, I'd been basically just laying in bed, doing breath work, meditation, self-introspection for 6 to 8 months because I had no other capacity, and I was still in the achiever kind of a mindset, although I'd realized it wasn't serving me. And so I was just going as deep as I could within my own experience. And then through contemplating death, there comes a deep awareness of what are we here for? Why are we chasing what we're chasing? And there was one particular day where I'd been asking, like, who am I? Who am I now? If who I was before the university lecturer, the sports performance coach, all of those parts of me have just been diminished and let go. And I'm down here in the care of my parents, and I've got a rental property in Queensland. That was about all that was left. I'd been off social media for months because I couldn't really be on there. I didn't have the energetic capacity. I couldn't hold conversations. And there was a day sitting I was in my meditation cushion in the room that I was set up in, and it was like a light bulb or a download. I didn't come up with it. But when I was letting go of the label of ulcerative colitis, I realized that I hadn't consciously changed my actions, my behaviors, my beliefs, or my values, which is all of the level of personal development work I'd done before. And I gather when you're talking about DeMartini's work before, that's the values assessment. Doing that level of work, and then there was this experience, I don't know, like a felt sense through my body. It was like, there's something else. There's a layer deeper. And when I asked myself, who am I? It was like a click. It's your identity. Identity underpins your values. It underpins the beliefs that you have because it's all an outward projection of who I am. And that's, for me, when I realized. And when I realized that, I was like, okay, if I've got a second chance at life, which at that point I did, I was starting to come up. I've done it, I'm going to say wrong, the first time to get myself into that position from overwork and from driving myself from lack. If I have a second chance at life, and this is a precious gift to have, how do I ensure that I live in alignment with who I'm really here to be and what I'm here to do? And so I set out about creating a system. To me, I loved, I was very analytical. So it was how do I ensure I don't miss my mark? How do I, if I get very clear on who I'm here to be from a felt place, because I know that if I'm living from love and joy every day, whether I'm winning and achieving, like the winning and the achieving, I was doing that to try to feel love and joy. But it's like, if I get that every day, well, well, then anything else I do is a bonus. So it was cultivating that and then going, okay, if that's the big vision and the embodiment practice, I'm going to create a system that ensures I don't miss my mark. And so that's all I did, was just over the next couple of months was, I guess you would say, like, tools started coming into my awareness, or I started having, okay, this would work at this level, and this would work in this, and this would then support this. It was like puzzle pieces coming together, and I created what I now term the identity system, and I've been applying that since. And yeah, it was an experience that I know now looking back, and there was an inkling at the time that I'm going through this, and I've gone through that for a reason. All of being the young achiever, the sciencey guy in university and lecturing, to losing it all, having a, quote unquote, a spiritual experience or journey, and then coming out the other side with this awareness from contemplating everything and having so much time for introspection, that it's like, okay, all of those things add up to create this, to be of service in this way.
You know what? I love what you just said in regards to love and joy. Everything we do is to get love and joy. So if we just choose love and joy as the thing that we do, then everything else is icing on the cake. Yeah. Oh my God, you just put that in the most mind-blowing simple terms that I think I can't unhear that. This is my big takeaway so far, and I think we're 17 minutes in.
Holy wow.
So simple, but it's true. We choose that. You choose that feeling every day, and
do my best to.
Yeah. I mean, yes, that's a good point to bring up, Todd, is we can fall off the rails sometimes. We're humans. We can have emotional swings and mood swings, and anger can come back into it. How do you deal with that? How do you bring yourself back to that love and joy state?
Yeah. For me, there's 3 parts to, if you want to call it our ego or our sense of self. One is our head. That's our thinking. That's our brain. That's primarily our subconscious. And it's designed, there's 4 steps to the subconscious. Number 1 is stay alive. Number 2 is avoid threat. Number 3 is avoid pain. And number 4, and only if criteria 1, 2, and 3 are all met, can we go towards pleasure. So our mind, where most of us live because we're driven on achievement or from lack or whatever it is, isn't designed or wired for us to go out and succeed and take risks and be abundant and express so much love. It's like, okay, stay safe, stay comfortable, do these things. And this is why so much of the personal development space, like we'll go, oh, we're self-sabotaging. No, we're just working, trying to fight fire with fire by working with the mind. And that's been a big realization for me only over the last 6 months, because I first created the identity system with mind in focus. And as I've come through, so we have, as I was saying, the head, then we have our heart. And our heart is our feeler. When we're thinking about achieving, what we're wanting is the feeling from the heart. And so the heart is where we choose to, or we can choose to lead from. And then we have our gut, or our intuition. So 3 parts. So we can give them names or identify with them. And in a nutshell, I know that when frustration or anger or resentment or whatever it may be, guilt or shame, they come up, it's from the head, because their heart only feels love and above, basically. And it doesn't respond or be driven by the mind. When you're leading from your heart, the head is quiet. And so for me, it's like I choose to lead from love, lead from my heart, and allow my intuition or my gut to make my decisions. And again, these have only been revelations over the last 6 months. And the gut, it's so incredible. It can make a decision in a split second that takes our head months. I've had a client that was 4 months of deliberation, and this only happened 2 weeks ago. 4 months of thinking about yes or no, should I, shouldn't I, trying to work it out, pros and cons, positives and negatives, all of that, and still couldn't make a decision. And so I took him through a process of connecting in with his head, his heart, and his gut, and then I said, okay, what's your gut say? And he's like, yep. Okay, perfect, done. And he's like, are you kidding? That was like, might have been a 10-minute process, but when I got down to the gut and he was connected and he could actually feel that sense, 5 seconds compared to 4 months. Because our head is designed to think about all of the things that could go wrong and basically make it like a mathematical equation where we do have that felt sense, that knowing. We've all had it. You know, those moments where, I don't know why, there's just a feeling I should, or I just need to do this thing. Go that place. That's that intuition. And when we can connect in with it, we realize that although I don't say, the head's not bad. It's serving a purpose. It's protecting us. But in terms of us experiencing love and joy and ease and flow in our life and abundance, the head doesn't do that. It does the opposite. And so it's when we can go beyond the mind and lead from our heart and lead from our intuition, that's how we, like, I'm still learning. I'm still experiencing, so I can only go from what I've witnessed and felt so far, but life becomes just a joyful flow. And so to answer the question around how do we come back to it, it's for me being mindful. So I'll close down my eyes, take some slow breaths, feel into my chest until I can feel. And for me, it's, I know a lot of people speak about like love and light and those kinds of things. For me, it's just imagining that there's a little, like a pearl, like a little white ball that's in the center of your chest. It's not glowing. It's not doing anything magnificent. It's just in there. And I just close my eyes, slow down my breath until I can be like, okay, I can connect with that or feel that in the center of my chest. And that's my reminder, because as I was saying before with the absolute truth, love is an eternal state. Love or awareness that we know through science and the quantum field and the observer effect and all of that, that awareness is always there. It's never not there. So if that awareness is love and it is always there, it means in every moment we have the capacity to feel love. It's just how mindful we are of getting out of our head and actually connecting with it. When there's days where I'm feeling really loving, it feels like that's like a beaming light, just expansive. And then there's days where I'm sitting there, it's like I feel like I'm digging in the beach, like looking through, trying to find the treasure underneath.
My pearl?
Yeah, where is it? And it might be a 5-minute process. It might be longer. But then when you connect in, you're like, oh, that's it.
You know what I've noticed you do too, and it's very rare to find this in people, is that I think you acknowledge when you've fallen off. And I've got so many people in my life, and I've done it in the past too. You sweep situations under the rug and you're like, oh, they'll forget about it, or maybe they didn't notice, or I wonder if they realised I felt that way, or I hope I didn't make them feel that way. Whatever it is, these situations can pop up. I feel like, in my experience being friends with you and having you in my life, is that you acknowledge those moments so that both parties can move on. And you're saying, this is the page that I am on. This is what I felt. I just wanted to clarify that. Yeah. Is that something that you consciously do? Have you noticed you do that?
I get what you're saying. For me, it's a journey and a process, and I'm just a little student. So I just take what I feel is in alignment with the highest truth or love, and I will embody that which seems aligned. So for context, when I'm talking about like a highest truth or a love, if anyone has heard of Dr. David Hawkins, and you're listening, or the scale of consciousness, it's a scale from 0 to 1,000, which they've done a lot of kinesiologic muscle testing with, hundreds of thousands of tests now that validate it and verify, and that's my guide. So for me, I go, okay, if I'm holding on to this thing, and let's say that's pride, and I don't want to explain that I've made a mistake, well, I know that pride calibrates at, now I'm going to test myself. I believe it's at like 150, 125. I think it's 125. And so if that's a 125, which is quite lower, and courage is at 200, or acceptance, which links in with forgiveness, is, let's say, I think it's like 350. I choose acceptance and forgiveness because it calibrates higher. It's closer to love, and that's more in flow. That's less of the head, more of the heart. And so I just go, okay, if that's acceptance and that's forgiveness, then I choose that because that's a higher calibration. So yeah, my journey as a person is to live in alignment with that map and that scale. And I am so incredibly grateful that the universe works the way that it does. And although Dr. David Hawkins has passed away, now he's not here. One of his students is actually based on the Sunshine Coast, and he's a bubble of love, this man. And he speaks to the truth of the map constantly and does the testing with me regularly. And I basically go to him and say, call me forward. Anything that you see or you witness or feel that is not in the highest service, let me know. And so we were having a joke about this actually in the last couple of days. And he's like, I'll call you a dick, spiritually speaking, when you're being a dick, spiritually speaking. And so that's really, I guess the answer to that is being humble and knowing that we are all, as long as we're in this human body, we have an ego, we have an identity, we make mistakes, and we're all doing our best. And so for me, if I can, by taking responsibility or apologizing for something or expressing more love, if that brings any more joy to anyone else, then it's like that's what we're all here for.
I love that.
Taking a quick minute to interrupt this conversation to let you know about something exciting I am growing. As you might know, I'm incredibly passionate about helping people to find and share their voice, especially if their voice is one that aims to create positive change in others. And I've launched a podcast network with purpose. It's called the Guide Your Light Network, that features podcasts and voices that inspire, educate, and transform listeners. And we have a library of podcasts that are part of our network that truly embody that mission, and we're looking for more. If this has sparked interest in you and you are ready to start exploring speaking and using your voice in this way, I'd love for you to check it out. Also, if you have something important to say and you don't know where to start to bring that to life, we can also help you to craft your authentic message through our Guide Your Light online sessions to help you get super clear on your intention, messaging, and structure needed to launch a podcast of your own that is authentically you. Just head over to guideyourlightnetwork.com.
I want to bring up mindfulness versus mindset, because I think this is a big thing. And I noticed something when I was away. I recently just spent 4 weeks in Europe.
Yeah, you did.
And it was awesome. But what I notice when I travel a lot is, and I'm sure everyone else notices this too, is that there's mindset fixes in different areas around the world. So the way that people act, even within a country, so within states, people think differently in Melbourne to they think in Sydney, to they think here in Queensland, to then going overseas and seeing the way people think differently as a collective in a certain area. So we tend to sort of weave into what each other do for some reason. I don't know why humankind is like that, but that's what happens. I'd love to get your insight into that mindset, or that fixed mindset, which I saw a lot of in certain areas. So can you talk us through sort of mindset versus mindfulness?
Okay.
And why, what that fix is and how we can shift past that?
Yeah. So again, it's like, what do they say? Disclaimer, like everything I'm talking about is just my experience and projection or reflection. So that's number one, because someone else's view could be really different. What I've witnessed with myself and my clients over the years is that mindset is a direction that we're choosing to focus, basically the lens we're choosing to look out of. So if we wanted to choose positive mindset or growth mindset, as Carol Dweck has popularized, that's having a perspective on how life can be. And it's, if we use that example, it's the lenses we're looking out of. So we want to see everything as positive. Now within that, growth mindset or a positive mindset, let's say on the Sunshine Coast, could be that we're very chilled, we go surf, we get our beach, we're our lifestyle. Whereas we go to Melbourne or Sydney or like New York, mindset there is achieve, grind, hustle, get it done, big hours, pride in the work ethic. Whereas up here there might be pride in the lifestyle. So there's differences, but we notice that it's still a perspective and a norm that we're looking to fit to. Mindfulness, before I jump into mindfulness, mindset as a core is basically all of just the internal dialogue, the stories that's going on inside. And so we do work, and I've done work on shifting the narrative, the language we use and how we're expressing things. So as that brief example of the lens, a lot of people say, yeah, have a nice day. It's like you can consciously choose your vocabulary and express a different energy towards someone by saying, have an absolutely incredible day, have a phenomenal day, have a remarkable day. And that's a mindset, because what I'm putting out is a projection of mine, but they then also receive it. Whereas mindfulness isn't as such to me a projection or a direction or an outlook or perspective. It is presence and it's awareness. So presence meaning that there's a lack of mind. There's just a being here now, as Ram Dass would say. But then the awareness as mindfulness is the part that's observing the mindset. Because if we're just focused on the mindset, go, 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 be in this way of achieving, of doing, of creating, and we're not mindful or aware of why or how we're doing that or being that, we're running blind. And that's the kind of like the hamster wheel. And so mindfulness, from my perspective, from my mindset, is just awareness of who we are, how we're being, why we're being. It's literally like mindset is first person, can't see anything outside of the tunnel vision. Mindfulness is the person sitting on the side watching all of the behaviors. You're the observer of yourself. And so I explain it to people if I use two different ways. So for me, this has been the journey. I was mindset, so driven. Oh, the achiever. Yes, bring me the validation. And then I ended up on my deathbed at 24, 25. So I didn't have mindfulness. I wasn't aware of why I was doing it or what I was doing it, and all coming from lack and pain and wanting validation or to hear it from my parents or whatever it was. Then when you bring mindfulness to it, you can go, oh, now I can choose. It's like retrospect. You have that position where you go, okay, now that I'm aware of that or have mindfulness to that, I can choose what path I go down. It's the equivalent of someone with an epic mindset. You're in a race. You've got, let's say for example, the outcome is to get to Sunshine Coast, and you got two people and they just start driving. One starts driving flat out. They're just wide open down the freeway. And then the other one takes 5 minutes to go, okay, well, first of all, where am I? Goes and asks someone, okay, this is where I am. Oh, we're in Perth. Shit, that's a big journey. Okay. And so then they work out the map and the directions. And so they start heading east, over the Nullarbor, doing that towards the Sunshine Coast. And the other person is just going directly north. But they're so set on their mindset of achieving and going fast. And that's the difference. It's mindfulness is the foundation. Mindset is then the fuel. You know how we say the wider the foundation, the taller the building can go? A lot of people are so focused on just going tall that the building falls. And so it's the foundation is mindfulness, and then mindset is the path or the engine.
It's such a good explanation, and comparing the two, I think, really puts a clear picture. And, I always say in this world, in this personal development world, it's so good to keep hearing it from different angles and from different perspectives, because when someone says it in a way that hits you, you can have heard this 1,000 times, but it's the person that says it in the right way for you to understand it that actually hits. Yeah. And that's I think that's why the personal development world is so addictive.
Yeah. Well, it's the question there for those that are, for you listening, is why are you doing what you're doing? And if we're not able to pause this for a moment and give that answer in like a 5 to 10 second gap, probably tells me that mindset is driving more than mindfulness. And we can be driving blind a lot of the time. And so that's like we were talking about before, my mission is for people to bring mindfulness to their mindset so that they can actually live fulfilled. Because that was the blessing that I got. I got to a point and it was like mindset did all this, but when you get to that, people talk about their eulogy and the I can't remember what it's called. Epitaph. That one. the epitaph. That they're like, well, what would I like to be said about me at the end of my days? And I had that, and I was like, whoa, that is not how, now that I've got a second chance, I don't want to live like that again. I'm not willing to. So, yeah, it's why are you doing what you're doing? And underneath that, if you're willing to go there, why are you being the way you're being?
Who are you being? Yeah, I've had that question on this podcast before. Callie Carthy brought that up. She was my business coach for a long time. And that stuck with me. Who are you being? At all times, you can always come back to asking yourself that question. And sometimes the answer's not what you want it to be. Yeah. So you can bring yourself back. Yeah. I want to talk about the personal development world a little bit. And because I know I obviously love it. I've got a podcast on this topic, and I can't get enough of the information that I'm learning and the different perspectives that come my way. But the personal development world can get very serious sometimes, can't it?
Oh, yeah. Oh, and you're talking to someone that's very competitive, so yep. Yeah.
Do you feel like sometimes you need a break from that seriousness of personal development?
Yes. And again, that's only a projection from experience, because it was, and seeing this a lot of the time, when we're so serious, we have like a heaviness to us. And it almost is like a pride driving us to get through the next blind spot or the next breakthrough. And when we can be more lighthearted about it, not take it so serious, you get to enjoy the in-betweens. Like when you're in the work, you're in the work. You're not making jokes about it. You're really there. But in between, you get to enjoy the process and take it not as so seriously. Like I said before, when my mentor would be like, I'm going to call you a dick. Like, okay, cool. Like we make jokes like that. And I've only learned that from him because I used to be so serious with it all. And we also see, you know, just like we have like the hamster wheel of life, and if we called it the rat race or the debt race, the credit race, there's also that with the personal development space where there's people that have been on the tour for decades, but they're just repeating the same thing. And sometimes that's because they're not wanting to actually go past their stuff. Sometimes it's because they love the feeling of the events and things like that. But again, it just aligns with what's the true mission underneath. And without the mindfulness, they'll keep doing the mindset.
I think that's so true. And you can, like I said, can get addictive. People get caught up in the element. But what you said, where you get to enjoy the in-between, I think that's the key, because doing the work hurts sometimes, clearing blockages, clearing trauma, whatever it is, why you're doing the work, trying to figure out who the hell you are.
Yeah.
It can sometimes hurt because you're asking yourself those deep questions. And that's why, like I said, it can get super serious, and sometimes we forget that element of fun.
Yep.
So I think that's important to note for people listening today is, yes, go and do the work, figure out who you are, clear the trauma that's there, but then don't forget to go and enjoy those in between, like reward yourself, have fun in between, and keep it light.
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause that's why we're there. That's why we're here.
I had recently, I was with a friend, and we support each other through our journey of doing the work, being the work. And we were talking about blind spots, because I've had a few people that I've pedestaled and kind of made like the guru, and then dishonored myself and what I've felt, my intuition. And we were talking about things that might still linger for me. And I realized I still had an addiction to overcoming blind spots. So whenever I could go searching for blind spots, I'd be looking for them. And the reason for that was so that I couldn't be blindsided, and that I'd be living in alignment with whatever it was. And there wasn't some part of me playing out in a negative way. And then this friend of mine brought up the question was, well, what happens when you, and a part of it in actual fact, in speaking with my mentor, was I had a fear of, I've seen a few people kind of like go into guru stuff, and it scared me witnessing it. And so when you have that fear, you then start to embody that fear. I was like, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to go down that path. And if I have any blind spots, I must clear them, because otherwise it could happen. And so then he's taught, and as he does, the wisdom there goes, okay, beautiful. Clear all those blind spots. And what happens once you've cleared all the blind spots? And I was like, oh. He's like, you'll have so much pride that you've cleared all the blind spots. And they say pride cometh before a fall. So you're literally like, I have no blind spots. I am the guru. Like, and so he said, you trying to avoid it is going to take you there. And he said, a better option is what the real mission is to choose to be love. Just keep focusing on that. That'll bring you your lessons. And just in the last 3 or 4 days, it's brought up a huge amount of lessons for me in that practice. And it's been deep. And then there's like the laughter in between. You go, oh my gosh, that is like that was playing out. Like the fear of blind spot was the blind spot. And that's the paradox of life. And that's why I love being the student. Like no matter what you learn, there's always going to be a part of life that can teach you another lesson. So yeah.
I love that. So how does Todd Jarratt like to have fun?
Oh, geez Louise. being with people. Like I'm I'm a low-key budgie smuggler addict. Like,
Oh, yeah, I've seen you in your budgie smugglers.
I literally go to the beach in my budgies, then skate around the streets in my budgies. Like, I just love the sun on my body.
Yeah.
And that's, like, me skating is fun, going out in nature and climbing mountains. But if I was to be the core of it, it's just being around people that I love to be around. What is switching off for me? Laying at the beach in the sun or laying on a couch watching movies, which if you asked me that 5 years ago, if I said laying down and watching movies, like, I would have punched myself in the jaw, because there's no way that mindset-driven guy, he's like, you're wasting time, you need to be doing this, this, and this, and that's the balance.
It's so interesting you say that. Rebecca Campbell was on this podcast not long ago, and she said she always had that feeling when she wasn't doing the work that she was supposed to be doing, that she always felt like there was something else that she needed to do and that she wasn't finished, and that there was always this angst of what am I going to be doing next? What should I do now? And I've felt that myself. I really resonated with what she said. But when you find yourself on your purpose path and you're doing work that's meaningful to you or living a life that's meaningful to you, it doesn't necessarily always have to be about what work we're doing in terms of career. I know we're both very career focused, but it's, some people, that's not their priority. But when you get into what's meaningful for you and what purpose path you are on, you feel that sense of, I can just relax a little bit now. I can enjoy downtime, and it's okay. The world is not going to end.
There's still like an aspect to that when we're going, as you said, like Rebecca was talking about with the next thing or needing to do the next thing. And I hear that, I go, it feels as though there's still that part within us that's lacking within ourselves. Because if we can't just sit and be and do nothing, we're not fully comfortable with our being, who we are. Because who we are, our identity, should not be based on a doing. Because then if I say tomorrow you can no longer do what you're doing and your identity is based on what you're doing, it's like, identity crisis, as people would say. And so this is where, again, it comes back to the feeling. Can we be so joyful and loving within ourselves that it doesn't matter at all what we do? And that's the icing on the cake. So there's not discomfort if we're not doing it. And that's a journey for all of us. It was only 2-3 months ago, I'd been through a really challenging couple of months where I was really caught in my head. And I went and had a breath journey and came out the other side, and it felt like acceptance. And it was this feeling of just relief and release of being so caught in my head for so many years of I'm here to impact millions of lives and to do the work and to be on stage and speak to all of these people. And then it was the awareness of, if the intention is to speak on stage and for people to feel it, to impact their heart, for them to feel love, and I'm so driven speaking from my head to get there, then my mission's driven from the wrong place, coming from lack. But then also, I'm not embodying it each moment. I'm so caught up in my head on the vision of the future of millions of people that every person I come into contact with during the day, they're not as important as my vision. So I speak to them from my head. I might be short, I might not take the moment, as you were saying before, like you said, people will feel that. It's giving the person in front of you all of your attention and presence. And that's feeling. And so if you just commit to being that way, you'll impact millions of lives across the course of your lifetime. But you're in the process of just being that, not from like it being an outcome to strive towards from the pride. It can be challenging for our mind to grasp, but it's what happens if our mission was just being the best version we can be right now, because then any other outcome will occur as a default.
You're making me have so many realizations. I think the reason why I love podcasting so much is that, like, look, if you see us now, we are looking right at each other. There's nothing that is going to disturb this hour or so that we are spending talking to each other. There's no external influence that's breaking this. And you get that I have your full attention and you have my full attention. And I think what I noticed when I was on holidays away for a month, I missed work, but I didn't miss work. I think I missed this feeling of connecting with someone so deeply like this, and this is why this is my purpose. I feel emotional having this realization now, because you can hear it in my voice. It's just like, fucking wow, that you've made me realize this. I think that's, again, why what you do is so special. And
on that for a moment, before you move forward, one quick thing. We create this right now. But what about when you get home? Without needing the podcast gear, it's like, how much could you give that to your partner, to your kids?
That's right.
And that's it. Then it's like every day is your podcast. Every moment is your podcast. And that feeling is not going anywhere. And it's not from doing a podcast. It's like, I'm just here with the person.
I think that's what choked me up. Amazing. Todd, you work with people one-on-one, right? And when people, I'm sure people come to you in all different situations and levels of their life. But when someone comes to you and says, Todd, I need your help, what are the processes that you take them through to identify themselves on a deeper level?
Depends. So, well, rather than giving depends, because I know that's a terrible answer on a podcast. Truth of it depends on where they're at, their journey, whether it's a professional athlete or a high-level business person. A lot of the time they're looking for a result. So it's like, okay, what is the result you're looking for? And what are the perceived blocks? Okay. And from there, it's bringing awareness to the blocks and moving through those so that basically things just flow up in the direction of the result. If it's someone that's going through a mental health challenge, as a different perspective, it's getting clear on what they want to feel and going from there. And this is where, for me, my journey was originally performance. And as I'm coming more and more through it, the performance is giving them the feeling. And so it's more focused towards, well, what is it you want to feel? How is it you want to be, as we were just saying? Because then the results come as a byproduct. So in terms of a process, it's asking. I don't coach through telling. I coach through asking questions. So, okay, what are your objectives? What is it you want to either achieve as a result, or achieve materially, or achieve in a feeling? Beautiful. Okay, where do you feel like you're at now? Okay, what have been the blocks? Okay, where do you feel like those have come from in the past? You know, the drivers, the subconscious. Amazing. When do these show up? How have these shown up in the past? When were they most prominent? And all I'm doing, it's mindfulness. I'm just bringing awareness to the mindset so that they can widen their foundation, so that they can have the third person perspective, so that next time when that block goes to come up, let's say we're talking about a professional athlete and that little thought comes up on the starting line of their race and it pops in and they go, not this time, because they have the awareness. I know where you come from. And it's like, I always use the analogy of roots and trees. If you want to truly change something, you don't pull out the leaves or the stems, you go to the roots. So it's always about going to the roots. And as soon as we shift that, that's when we shift permanently. It's the analogy I give with the identity. And to speak to this, how do I do it or what do I do, is I go to the roots of their subconscious blocks. Or I go to the roots now, if it's about feeling, of where the blocks are to feeling, or the blocks are to their intuition, which is just a nervous system protection, and then guide them through that in a way that they feel safe and they feel comfortable, and allow them to feel and process that, and then it clears. Something I speak of when I present on identity, and it's called the silver mentality. Without going into all of the backstory to it, it's a principle where I had a professional athlete. He'd been 15 years traveling the world, performing, competing, and across 15 years, if we use the silver mentality, how many gold medals, world titles, do you think he won? Zero. And so we went through this process, asking questions, just layering down. And this is a very stoic, you can imagine professional athletes, they're driven on the pain and on the grind. He broke down and cried and goes, if I knew this 15 years ago, my whole career, my whole life would be different. Everything about me would be different, because even post-career, he was living a silver mentality. And so for me, I watch so many people who've got silver roots, silver trunk, silver branches, silver stems, silver leaves. And so people are working at the level of their actions, and they go, okay, I'm going to find this silver leaf and I'm going to chop it off. And now I've got a gold leaf over here. I'm going to graft it on, sticky tape it on, hold it. Beautiful. Okay, that one's done. Now I'll go to the next. And they do the same process, snip it off, graft it on, tape it up, water it. They go through and they're attempting to transform their life through actions or behaviors or beliefs or sort of values. And then by the time they've done 100 of these leaves, they look down and there's silver leaves growing again down below. They're like, I can't even get halfway around the tree. And so to me, identity is the roots. So I go, we see that all the silver. And so when it's presented, the roots shift from silver to gold. And the next step, the entire tree goes gold and people get it. They're like, oh, the core, the roots, identity. And so when it's going through that process, what I'm doing is digging down to see where their identity has held their values, beliefs, behaviors, and actions before. And once they get that, we shift the identity, the sense of who I am.
Wow, that's cool. And I know you use tools and techniques such as breath work to make that happen. I've seen massive transformations with the breath work that you hold and just breath work in general. I've seen you in breath work facilitation in terms of receiving and giving. It's a massive, amazing tool that at breaking through those barriers and digging deep quite quickly. And just, the breakdowns that you see are just quite life-changing, aren't they?
Yeah, it's to me, I would credit breath work to saving my life. When I got introduced to deep breath work, I was just starting my journey with Mitch Vickridge, who was the man that showed me how to heal my liver and my kidneys and thus my body from the inside out. When the medical system, in short, the medical system told me there's no way I could keep my intestine or survive without medication. And this is I'm a university lecturer in physiology, and I was still in so much fear from what I'd been told by the white lab coats and the doctors that that's what I believed. And I got to a point where I haven't been on medication since 2020. I don't have a plan on going back on it. I've healed myself against the medical system's beliefs or possibilities. And a big part of this came from when I had my first deep breath work session with Mitch Vickridge. And I had been on copious amounts of pain medication for months before, and I hadn't been able to leave my bed or my bedroom for weeks. And my dad had already come up from Victoria to care for me because I couldn't move myself. He'd have to feed me, to sit me up, to eat food. And Mitch took me through a very gentle 45-minute breath, a conscious connected oral breathing. And something happened in that breath work where all of the pain left my body, all of it, to the point where when the breath finished, I got up out of my bed, stood up, walked for the first time in weeks, opened my bedroom door, walked into our kitchen. My dad was sitting on the couch next to my housemate, and they look at me with stunned kind of mullet eyes, whoa, what are you doing? And then I start jumping up and down on the spot. I'm yelling, I'm healed, whoa, this is incredible. And they're like, get the fuck back in your bed, get back to bed. And so I got back to bed. 3 hours later, I was like, oh, that was a bad idea. But there was a truth in that I experienced so deeply that I was like, no amount of medication could have given me that. And that was just through me changing the state of my body from within, my own supply, and so I messaged Mitch and said, send me everything you know, tell me where to go, what to do, how to do it. I'm going to do this stuff constantly. And so I had a big breathwork journey because I had a lot to release from my body. And from that was a lot of experience. And when my family witnessed it and I got to experience it, and you go, there's power in this. And so there's all different forms of breath work and principles to it. So really it just comes down to me, what is the person looking for?
Yeah, it definitely is an incredibly powerful tool. And wow, you must have had this blockage just absolutely cleared in that moment to have that instant release of physical pain and suffering that you've been enduring for so long.
Yeah, and I knew that there was a key to healing in it. I knew it because if nothing else had given me that, and then that's when I just knew there's something to this. And so an hour and a half breathe is a lot for someone to do, say, once a week. There's integration involved with it. Because I was laid up in bed and just meditating and reading and stuff, I was doing 3 1.5 hour breathes every week for across 6 months. So I did a lot of deep breath in a condensed period of time. But what I was doing was releasing. And so in terms of deeper breath work, if we're talking about, say, people would say holotropic or like neurodynamic or rebirthing breath work, in a principle, these are like 45-minute to kind of, or half an hour to 2 hour breathes. Usually anything longer than an hour is known as like pretty extensive. But what we're doing is, in terms of that scale of consciousness, our body is energy. And our nervous system, as we were talking about right back at the start, circling back, our nervous system, our subconscious, is designed to remember all of the pain and the challenges and to hold those so that we don't go through them again. And so they're, so to speak, they're like little memory files in our body. And they're below 200, which is the key point of flip on that scale of consciousness. 200 is the set point between negative and positive. And what we understand about breath work isn't some magical 1000 calibration. Breath work calibrates at 200. But what it enables us to do is get beyond the mind, so that then the mind that holds all the stuff in, that keeps us blocked and keeps us suppressed and hurting and heavy, that kind of goes quiet. And then the body's innate healing intelligence can come through. And it just releases what it needs to for us to come closer to homeostasis, our balance point. And so that's what we see a lot of the time when people might be like, shaking or moving or making some sound or letting out emotion. That's literally the body's innate intelligence going, we shouldn't have this in here. We're going to clear it out and release it. And it's so beautiful. When you first start and you're witnessing it or hearing it, you're going, whoa, that's intense. But when you get the magic of it, that this is the body healing itself beyond the mind's capacity, just like when we have a cut, we don't think about it healing itself and scabbing over and then having that clean skin. That's what the body's doing. And so I have such a reverence for breath work, and it's beauty for physical healing, but then beyond that, out of body experiences and mystical quote unquote experiences that people have. So
yeah, initially when I invited you on this podcast, it was before I went away, and I was like, I need to speak to someone on this podcast specifically about breath work, and that's why I came to you. But you honestly, you have a library of information. We could probably have our own show where you're just delivering information, and your identity system is just so prominent at the moment and something so important. I think that I really wanted to talk about that as well. And I know that breathwork ties into this as one of your incredible tools that you use. I also know you're a fan of the good old ice bath, because you brought yours over to our house for my husband to use every morning. He's got this unusual high every morning for about 45 minutes after he jumps out of the ice bath, thanks to you. But that's another tool that's pretty special in your life, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it was more so now that I'm in the van full time. Yeah, but the ice, to me, the ice has its own physical benefits. I used it more if we're talking about the mindset. At first, I used it as every morning, I don't want to get in freezing cold water. Like, who in their right mind wants to? I don't think there's anyone that their body's like, let's do that. And so for me, it was about doing the thing that my mind doesn't want to do, to prove to myself that I am stronger than it, that I can overcome it. So it was a mindset tool. Then over time it progressed to, I'm going to use this as a meditative practice, because when you're in the ice bath, your biggest tool is connection with your breath. If you can remain mindful with your breath and you can inhale and exhale through your nose for 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out, 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out, you can stay in the ice bath for 45 minutes, an hour. People go, oh no, you'll get hypothermia. But what happens is you're actually, through that breath, managing your autonomic nervous system, which they believe wasn't possible, as many will know through Wim Hof's work. And being able to do that, it basically sends a signal to your nervous system that we're safe, we're comfortable, we're calm, we're all good here. We don't need to go into a reactive response and start firing off alarms and things like that. So yeah, and that's the principle, if we link it back with breath for a moment, that there's a lot of sectarianism, if we wanted to call it that, in breath work, where it's like, oh, I use this practice and only this practice, or I use this one, and it becomes like I identify with, and there's a sense of ownership, oh, this is better than. we all have a breath. We do it every day. There's no right or wrong, better or worse. It's just different principles. And so the way I talk to people about it when they ask, like, oh, what style of breath work are you trained in? I go, well, you could say multiple. But for me, I just go, there's principles of breath, and I just use those because that's what we, in physiology and lecturing, that's what we would always come back to. So it's like, if I know that nose breathing, slow, deep, belly, exhales, deep tones or low pitch sounds, things like that are all parasympathetic, calming. And I know that mouth breathing through the chest, short, sharp, fast, high-pitched sounds, inhales, all of those are sympathetic, going to upregulate the nervous system. What's the person want? What are they needing? What's their body asking for? And just do that. To me, it's very simple in that sense. And when you have those principles down pat, you can just play with the breath because no one owns it. No one has the rights to, this is the speed at which you breathe because we've been doing it for thousands of years, however long we've been around. So
if you're not breathing, you're dead.
Yeah, that's it. Like it's that simple. So
it's true. It's true. Thank you, Toddy, for this conversation. You've blown my mind several times, I must say. But I always ask everyone this question, and you're probably expecting this one, based on the title of the podcast. What is something in your life that you could not unhear? Something that caused you to create positive change in your life and that shifted you in some way?
Be love.
Where did you hear it?
That one comes from Darren Maritza. He was on a podcast and actually said, love everyone and everything, including yourself. Now,
hard to do sometimes, isn't it?
And that's the thing, because to be love, it's when we're living in our head, to be love, it's not really a possibility because it comes from our heart. So I've heard it, and I've heard it many times before I could actually get it experientially. But that's like that absolute truth that we were speaking about back at the start of. There's so many stories we can make up as humans about what this means and what that means, and we need to go through this mind, like this cognitive process to get to here, to create this safety in the body, to do this, to be able to get to this, to feel love. Underneath it all is awareness or love. So in every moment that you can connect in with that, be love. And so my little parting piece with that is when people are like, well, how do I be love? Number one, remember back to a time when you felt love in your life. As soon as you're feeling that, that's love. Boom, you're there. It's not like some mystical enlightenment process. Just go back to a time you felt love, there it is. And then, as Darren has said, and I've learnt so much from that man, and I'm so grateful for him, and me getting to share this message as like a conduit for him, I said, okay, Daz, I get that, be love. But what happens if you don't yet have the capacity to be love consistently? He said, well, again, repeat the process of feeling love, connect with that. And then he said, make a list of all the things you don't love and then put that at the top. Practice loving those. So if you can't love war, that's a moment where you say something about war, you go out of love, you go into fear or hatred or whatever it is. Perfect. That's your work. Find the things you can't yet love and love them. And then as soon as you love them, cool, there's the next thing.
It's beautiful. Thank you so much for your time today. I've loved every single minute of this past hour. It's, there's always so much more to you, like an onion. You could just keep peeling it back and there's so much more. But I will put all of your contact details in our show notes so that others can find you. If you live on the Sunshine Coast, you're lucky enough to be here in the presence of Toddy, then look him up and see if you can work together on some breath work and some identity work, and you running everything remotely as well with all of your Shifting the Matrix events too. So location is no longer a barrier, which is amazing. But again, thank you for your time, your undivided attention, our 1 minute hug before, and I'm sure we're going to have a 1 minute hug after as well.
Yes, thank you, beautiful. And thank you for everyone that's enjoying this.
Thanks, Toddy.
Thanks for listening to the show. What did you think? And what did you feel? Let us know by leaving me a message on the Things You Can't Unhear Instagram community page. And if you can, give us some ratings love on your favourite listening platform.